Phenomenal. Yeah, it's like completely different to how you drink a bottle of water.
Do you know why it's in a can?
No idea.
Save the turtles.
It's better for the environment because I can recycle the can, and I would be totally up for buying this over plastic any day.
And I think it's the way we should be going, by the way, into cans, away from plastics. Definitely a great idea.
And would you buy cans over a plastic bottle?
Yes, any day.
Yeah, I have done.
Yeah, definitely over plastic.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Millennial Mind. Today I'm so excited to introduce you all to the co-founder and marketing director of Cano Water. So hi Josh.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
No, I'm good. I'm very good, thank you. It's Friday, so can't complain.
Hallelujah. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited to speak to you. Although I feel like I've listened to so many of your podcasts, I feel like I know you're the answer you're going to give me. So you are the co-founder of Cano Water. Now, in listening to one of your podcasts, I never knew it was like Cano Water. That just didn't sink in with me. I was like so stupid, and I was like calling it like Cano Water. And then I heard it in a podcast. This girl was like, "Oh, it's such a cool phrase. Like it's amazing. It's Cano Water." And I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so stupid." I didn't get that. But the company you set up is amazing. But for people who don't know anything about Cano Water, just give a bit of an introduction as to why you started it and what it's about.
Yeah, so the name Cano Water actually was created from a WhatsApp group, funnily enough, with me and my two good friends, because we were trying to think of a name, because we originally were going to call it Water Drop. And then our lawyers basically told us that we couldn't because it was too descriptive of the product. So yeah, that's a bit of something that I've never spoken about on a podcast. So yeah, the idea of Cano Water really came from me and my two best friends going on holiday to Thailand. We grew up in an area where you don't really see any plastic pollution. You see bottles on the side of the street, and you see cans, but you never really see mountains of plastic. And we went to Thailand for a friend's holiday and came across serious amounts of plastic, all from companies that we grew up loving. In the UK, we love brands like Evian and Coca-Cola, but we don't see the after effects. And I think that it massively sort of shocked us. And I still to this day don't know why, but we just became completely and utterly obsessed to try and make a difference. I think the three of us always wanted to have a purpose-led business, but this just felt like it was our calling. And Cano Water was created in, the idea was created in 2015. I think it was early 2015. And it really just was, a project that the three of us did a lot of research and saw that aluminium is forever recyclable. So we just thought, no one's put water in a can in the world, so we're going to be the first ones to do it.
I think that's so inspiring because I think, like you said, you didn't grow up in an area where plastic pollution was a thing. And I think recently people have been talking about the environment, whilst when you set up the company, was it like 6-7 years ago, right?
Yeah. 6 years
People
ago.
just didn't really care about the environment. So for you guys to take that concept and actually do something about it and create such an amazing business is really inspirational. But what I wanted to ask you around that is, did you always care about the environment? Why did it shock you so much when you went to Thailand and saw all of this plastic? Because a lot of people go to Thailand. I've been to Thailand, but it's never shocked me. I mean, I haven't seen it as badly, I would say, but it's interesting how it's completely shocked you and you did something about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, a lot of people used to say to me, why do you care? You've never cared before. I was definitely part of the problem. And I think that that's what makes the three of us quite special within this. I think that I would have looked at a environmentalist and said, I can't, buy into that person. I'm not like that person. But when I look at someone like David Attenborough, who obviously is a lot older than me, but if I, give another example of, someone else that cares about the environment that is similar to myself, I buy into them a lot easier. So I think that Why did we care? I just don't know. That is the honest truth. We just became obsessed with it. As I said before, I feel like it was a bit of a calling for us. I also think that when the idea of Cano Water came about, and the can side of it, it was more like, we've got to do this. It's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
You know, my colleague Perry came to us with a design, and we completely fell in love with it.
It is amazing.
I always say
I
that
love it.
99% of people would have come up with the idea of canned water and just said, this is so stupid. And I think it takes for that 1% to just turn around and be like, you know, we're going to do it. But the first, you know, when we came up with the idea, the hardest thing really was the people around us didn't really understand it. You know, even my own family didn't really get it. People were like, why are you doing this? Canned water's stupid. And, you know, that played, you know, that carried on for a good sort of few years within the industry to try and explain to people who didn't even care about the environment that cans are a lot better. But that's what excites me personally.
I think you've touched on two things there. So one of the things I wanted to kind of touch on what you said was about identity, right? So you weren't really an environmentalist. When you looked at you, people wouldn't think that, but you were part of the problem. And also just acknowledging that and also realizing that your identity can be fluid. So if you haven't been interested in one thing your whole life, doesn't mean you can't be interested in it now and do something to change that. So that's one thing I really loved what you said. The second thing you said was no one really understood it. And I can imagine, because back then, no one really cared about the environment. Even now, I think a lot of people have to research a lot and do a lot, and it takes a lot of time to consider your environmental impacts. And people are still quite, how do I say it? Some people just don't love it, right? So for you to start a company 6 years ago and talk about this stuff was quite progressive. So how did you find kind of explaining to people on both of those fronts? Number one, it wasn't part of your identity, and number two, you know, you were starting this new company and people didn't understand it. How did you navigate through that? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs listening and watching this will be feeling the same, right? A lot of people don't understand your idea and your passion and your meaning or your purpose behind it. How do you navigate through those difficult conversations?
I think it's a really, really good question. I think one thing is that we didn't just want to put water in a can. We wanted to create a brand, you know. When you've got something that looks really good, it definitely helps you. You know, I think that's half of the battle. But trying to convince people over the phone that they should be buying a can of water when they've never seen it before in their life. You know, the amount of times that people would put the phone down on me or laugh down the phone. You know, we sat down with some massive industry experts, people that have made serious businesses within the food and drink world, who completely they just didn't think that we would ever have a chance in this industry. You know, I listen to quite a lot of podcasts. I don't know if you've ever heard or listened to How I Built This, another podcast, but you know, the guys from Airbnb are a perfect example. You know, they had to convince people that strangers could or would be sleeping in your house one day. You know, that's mad. It's mental. And I think that is the perfect example of now it's one of the biggest businesses in the world. You know, purpose-led and disruptive businesses, if you work really, really hard and you've got a serious, you know, you solve a serious issue, I think that, you know, you've just got to be passionate. And I think that's why I always say that we were quite naive. If we had known the journey that we were going to go down, would we have done it? Probably not, because it was it has and it still is very, very difficult. But, you know, the first 3 to 4 years of people saying no can be very, very, very tough. And there were days where, you know, I'd have to leave the office early because I found, you know, it was so stressful and I couldn't take so much like rejection. I had so much rejection in one day. But then the next day, someone would get back to you and be like, oh yeah, we want the product. And so there's so many ups and downs from an entrepreneurial perspective. And I definitely think that the more disruptive you are, the harder it's going to be. But the rewarding side of when there's a switch, which for us was Blue Planet, the whole David Attenborough program, you know, that day that happened and this, you know, that instant switch in someone's mentality, albeit, you know, it was big for us, but, you know, we haven't even scratched the surface. But, you know, just overnight, you can see that your brand goes from the most stupid, pathetic idea in the world to something that's actually needed, which is so rewarding for an entrepreneur, especially someone that's, 99% of the time you feel like you're sort of, flogging a dead horse.
So one of the things you talk about a lot is, going through these ups and downs and being an entrepreneur. It's so difficult at times to face a lot of this rejection. How do you manage that, and how do you make yourself more resilient to rejection?
I think the first 3 years were a massive, massive learning curve for me. I started Canna Water as this very, as I said, naive entrepreneur who, had never really experienced rejection, to be completely honest with you. Yeah. My other business partner was in recruitment, so he's experienced plenty of it, but I never had. So it's pretty horrible, and I think that you have to be seriously thick-skinned to be, if you're going into a challenger business, and I think that's something that I've learned massively. And I'm a completely different person today than I am than I was when I started Canna Water. I was a 23-year-old kid who had no real business experience, if I'm completely honest with you. I was always entrepreneurial, but I had never done anything like this before. So I think that I started to accept that no isn't a terrible thing, and also no's can turn into yeses. So don't ever think that, I would get so low about a no, and then it would come back as a yes. And then afterwards I'll be like, why did I even care about, obviously I care because it's my baby. And we would all have days where we would all, between the three of us boys, when it was just us three, there would be days where one of us would just have a slip and we'd be like, I just can't be here anymore. I need to go and have a breather. Which I think's really, really normal. And I think that something that I've learned, even in the past year, is failure isn't a bad thing. It really just makes you stronger. And I think that just embracing failure is something that a lot of people need to do more of. Personally, I massively embrace failure now. And I think that you will always become a better business person and a better person all round if you are able to, embrace that failure.
I love that, and I want to touch on what you said as well around, all three of you. I remember this from another podcast. Were working for businesses, right, for different companies. All of you did different things. Yeah. And then I think to switch into an entrepreneurial mindset from an employee mindset is really hard. And I think a lot of people don't talk about this that much. And I think when you're used to working for somebody else, you're used to getting recognition from them, getting praise, falling back on them if something happens, going to them for advice. When you're running your own business, it's literally just you. Yeah. Or in your case, you and two of your friends. And so those first 3 years that you've talked about are really important to share, actually, because I think a lot of people don't talk about this and how hard it is and how grueling it is, and on days you just can't cope with it. So thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people listening and watching this will be going through the same kind of thing or be feeling that they just want to give up. What advice would you give for people who are really struggling with this at the moment and just feel like they just want to give up?
I think that, feeling lonely, which is definitely something that loads of people have shared to me and I've identified with massively, is very, very normal. And just accepting that you're on a journey and it's going to be ups and downs. One of the most difficult things, one of the most difficult things is on the outside, a lot of people look in and they're like, wow, this is amazing. You've got this. You must be a multi-millionaire, all this stuff. Yeah. These people have no idea. It really is tough. There's been times, especially in the past year, where, I've struggled to even pay my rent because we had to protect the business in different ways, And I think that what I've learned is try and find other people who identify with you and people who sort of understand you. And just talk to them. I've always been a very, very open person, but I feel like with Canna Water, at times I've been a bit of a closed book. But one thing that I've learned in the past year is everyone's in the same position, and just talking to people and getting an understanding, and even just hearing that those people also feel the same is really refreshing. Because most entrepreneurs, they have the same journey. You know, they're lonely at some point, they're scared, there's so much fear. You know, most of the time you don't even know what you're doing. And you just do it. And you know, most of the people say like, "How did you do this?" And I don't even know how I did it. You know, I think I've just got something in me that is, you know, I'm able to navigate myself, you know, through a problem and troubleshoot. And I think troubleshooting is one of the most important skills to have as an entrepreneur, because when things happen that are bad, which happens a lot, you really, really need to have that mindset of, I'm going to sort this out, I'm going to get through it. And you know, the difference between being an employee and being an employer is that you've got to deal with it and no one else can deal with it. So that's something that, you know, I am a completely different person now. I wouldn't even be speaking like this 6 years ago, but it's made me a lot stronger.
So you talk a lot about how you struggle with your mental health. How did you find that during lockdown and with your business? Because, you know, entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey, and when something goes wrong, you often take it on yourself, right? You feel really bad about it, and that can be really hard in terms of managing your mental health. How do you do that at the moment?
You know, I've had many years in my life that have been really tough from a personal perspective, mainly as a child. Well, really sort of like, you know, 15 to 18. And I would say that the last year has definitely been the most challenging for me in my life, mainly because so many things happened at once. You know, family and work all hit me at once. And it was really, really hard to sort of, it was really hard. I talk about troubleshooting and navigating. It was so hard to navigate because half of it you can't control. And when you can't control something, your head is just sort of like, you know, and a lot of stuff with work that's happened in the past and other sort of things, you know, I can navigate my way in and out of things. And, you know, I think that being innovative and coming up with solutions is something that I'm very, very good at. But when you can't control it and you feel powerless, it's horrible. And, you know, one thing that, you know, I've found difficult, and I think that a lot of people have found difficult, is isolating is something that I've never really enjoyed and never really liked to do. I like to be around people because I'm a massive overthinker. And when you're in lockdown and you can't go out for dinner and you can't go on holidays, and you know, music, I'm a DJ and I have been for many years. It's a massive hobby of mine. You know, when you can't do any of that and everything gets stripped from you and you've only got yourself. I don't drink and I haven't drunk for nearly 12 years. You know, I basically felt through lockdown like I had nothing to sort of cover up the pain of what was going on. You know, Canna Water was massively struggling, not really because of the brand, mainly because everywhere we sell at, you know, 90% of the business was closed. The brand was still strong, you know, there was nothing bad with Canna Water, but when everything closes and you rely massively on, you know, the majority of trade and, you know, all these big retailers that we sell at, and the meal deals, no one's going to pick up a can for a meal deal. Obviously, it's really tough. So as a founder of a business with everyone else in the business, you know, we've got a big team, not a big team, we've got a team of 7 now. You know, everyone's looking in, you know, who's watched this grow and thinking, this is terrible. But I think, as I said before, one of the things that I found really helpful was speaking to others. There was a point in lockdown where I reached out on Instagram to, and I never ever post anything on my story, really, ever. especially anything personal. And I reached out to people and basically just said, if anyone else is feeling like this, would you, if I started something for people to come together and talk, would anyone be interested? And that was so un-me to do that, because I genuinely, I've never had, I've never really had the balls to do it. I've always got scared of ever reaching out to people on social media. When I usually talk to people, it's usually friends and family.
Yeah.
But I got over literally probably about 4 hours. I basically got 150 messages, over 150 messages.
Wow.
Yeah, just from so many people that just, a lot of people look at me as someone, with an amazing job, amazing girlfriend, amazing car, amazing this, amazing that. But deep down, I'm so low and so lonely. So when they hear that someone like me is struggling, I think they think like, oh, maybe it isn't what it looks like on the outside. Maybe, and I think that what was incredible is myself and a friend of mine basically did 4 weeks of these Zoom meetings where we basically had a speaker for 4 weeks, and anyone could come and join and listen to the speaker. And, we just did it just for fun, really, and to help ourselves and to help others. And what it showed me is that there are, through lockdown, in life, there are so many people that don't really want to talk. They'll happily talk if someone else says it, but they're very, very scared to talk. And do you know what? I know that we helped loads of people because we got the most amazing messages, but it really, really, really helped me to know that I'm not alone. And I think that, that's the same whether it's being as an entrepreneur or being just a normal person who finds every day hard, that, mental health is so normal. It is so normal to feel shit, basically, and so normal to not feel okay, that, my thing is all about just normalizing it. And, it should get to a point that if you're not feeling bad, that's not normal, because, I think that everyone has something that they, that they need to speak to someone about personally.
Absolutely. And social media is a really great way of hiding that as well, isn't it? You can upload a post, or you can say you're at a restaurant and everyone will think you're happy. And I actually uploaded a similar thing like 2 years ago when I was like traveling and I was modeling full time, and it just felt like everyone thought I was like living an amazing life. And then I felt like I was being false on my social media. So like I put up a post being like, life isn't always amazing. Like everyone has bad days, everyone's normal. But I think what you did in lockdown is really amazing. I think that's such a great thing to kind of take that initiative and do something for other people as well. So that service there is amazing and really inspiring. So well done. I want to talk a little bit about any challenges you faced in terms of feeling settled with your business. So I think a lot of the time when you're starting up a business, you can have a win and then you can take that. And I think a lot of the reasons why businesses fail is people attach themselves to that win and then don't keep persevering, right? So you've talked about this in terms of Selfridges. Not that you did that, but you could have just stopped there, right? What always pushes you to be like the best?
The three of us are, I don't know, the best way to describe it is that we wouldn't take no as an answer. And we also, because so many people laughed at us and said no, we literally had a point to prove.
Yeah.
And we were passionate as well. Our whole mission was to stop single-use plastic from getting into the ocean. And you've got all of these people who are basically saying, no, plastic's fine. And we're like, okay, well, have you seen what we've seen? And, I think that just basically being passionate is like, especially for the first 3-4 years, especially when it's just, a small team and the co-founders or the founder, you've basically got to just go mad. That's the best way to describe it. And, we used to do things where we were sitting in the office and we had nothing to do. And I'd just be like, all right, I'm getting my car wrapped tomorrow. I'm wrapping it in can of water, can of water stickers. And we're going out on Oxford Street and we're handing out cans to people. We need more followers on Instagram. So we're going to do this thing called can for gram,
Yeah.
where if we get not a gram of anything else, but we'll give you a can, and you basically follow us on Instagram. I think we realised that name was probably a bit misleading, but that's the type of stuff that we used to do, and I think that it's those guerrilla marketing tools that, listen, it doesn't work in every business. You're not going to do that if you're in property, but I think that in Canno Water, what we needed to be was, challengers, and we have always been very much, the underdog fighting against, the giants who produce tons upon tons of plastic. And how do we get our voice out there? We've got no money, zero money, and what do we do to get people to know us? All right, let's just park on Oxford Street and block the whole thing and get people to to start talking about the brand. And I think that in the early days, it worked massively for us. Now we've got a very different approach. We probably still will do similar things, but that was just to get our our foot on, really just to get us known in some capacity, even in London, because no one knew us. I think the way that we did it was very much a chicken and egg situation. So within food and drink, in order to get into somewhere, you have to be with a distributor, and in order to get into that distributor, they want to know that there's demand. So the only way to get demand is by getting people to then go into the shops and go, why don't you have Canno Water? Then the shops go to the distributors and say, why don't you have Canno Water? And then basically it creates this demand within the distributors. And, the people that we would call, who laugh down the phone at us, would then call us after the whole David Attenborough thing, saying, listen, people are calling us and they want Canno Water. All we really did was plant a seed. Yeah. So, what was so special was that those days that were doom and gloom, where we would go home thinking, what are we doing with our lives? Everyone around us is making money and we're literally just doing this thing that people think is crazy. We were actually planting a seed, and it's really, really difficult to see it. I saw this, I used to see this picture all the time. I don't know if you've ever seen it, of this man that's basically hammering to try and get to I think it was like a diamond or something, and he basically stops just before he gets there and doesn't realize how close he is. And I think that me and my business partner Aria, we've always said, we're on the cusp, and it's true, we still are on the cusp. But what was so nice is that when people started to say, now we need you, it's so nice to know that your work was, you were chipping away at something that actually it worked, and that's really rewarding.
Of course, I think your determination is so admirable. But one thing, you work with two friends. How is that? Because a lot of people avoid working with their friends and their family because it seems to be quite tricky if you get into a confrontation or you have different views about something. How have you found working with them, and how have you managed to manage any conflict with them? So
I don't think it's easy. I think that we've all got different views, and I think as the business has grown, it gets, those views get sort of, bigger and bigger, and some people, might say A and the other person might say B, and I think that it is difficult. I think that because there's three of us, it was always better than just two, personally. Because if there was two against one, it was always sort of like, well, that's ruled out type of thing. And I think that we've, it was always fair in that perspective. It's not easy. And, everything that you read about co-founders that argue, it's true. But I think that that's what makes us special as well, or not special, but that's what makes us, we are normal. We're normal people. We're not, aliens. We are literally like all these other stories that you hear. But we've got massive respect for each other. I think that's one thing that's incredibly important. And also we've got a team around us as well that, help us with the decisions. But I think that our passion is also, it creates debates, and healthy debates. But yeah, listen, I think that it's definitely been a learning curve, but I wouldn't have chosen to have started it with anyone else, because I know that we wouldn't be where we are today if I'd gone into the business with anyone else, and that's the honest truth. And I think that, you know, if one of us wasn't in it, we wouldn't be where we are today, and vice versa. And that's really important to remember that, because you can think, and I've seen it with other businesses, like, oh, I'm the most important, but the reality is that it's the DNA of the business, and that can't change.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, what's so amazing is you guys have stuck this out and kind of persevered. And what you talk about is, you know, you started this company 6 years ago. Everyone thinks it's amazing. Everyone thinks that, you know, you've got loads of money and you're like millionaires and co-founders or whatever. You know, you made it into Forbes 30 under 30 this year, which is an incredible achievement. So congratulations. But still, there's a lot that goes into that, right? And I think this is what I wanted to share is you started this 6 years ago and you worked really hard. I mean, I noticed Can and Water, and why I reached out to you is when I was at London Fashion Week. And I just remember being like, oh, okay, I didn't drink at the time. I got this can in this goodie bag. And I remember being like, oh, okay, and I've actually posted on my story of Can and Water. I tagged it. I'll post it on the video. I did it it was like 2 years ago. Hopefully it's still in my archives. And I posted it, and I still remember it was on this flower bed. And it was so great because I carried this can when I was running. I drank it, and then I put it in the bin. And then I continued running. Yeah. And so I was just like, whoa, this is such a good idea, because it's not as heavy as like a bottle of water. Obviously the plastic element of it is better, but like it's just so great when you're running. And so I remember posting that, and then I will try and find it and put it on this video.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But you know, you've created such an incredible company, but it's taken a lot of hard work and resilience. And I think even talking to you today, it's just really shown that grit. What advice would you give to anyone starting their business right now?
I think just keep going, really, and don't let anyone tell you that it can't be the biggest thing in the world. We're in a generation right now where people are, you know, you can be anyone and anything, and you can do anything. Mm-hmm. And I think that is really, really important. We're out of that world where people, you know, you can't beat the next man, or you can't beat the, you know, get over the hurdle. You know, we were told that putting water in a can is impossible. That's what people took. It's impossible to put water in a can. It's never been done before. I think that it is incredibly, we're in a really, really great time. So I always say to any girl, guy, man or woman, entrepreneur, whatever you are, I always just say, just keep going. And if you believe in something, just carry on. I think that a lot of ideas just get washed over, and people are like, I can't do it, or I don't want to do it. But if you're seriously passionate, you know, never ever let anyone or anything tell you that you can't do it, because obviously it has to be possible in some aspect, and some ideas might not work. But I think that if you give it a go, you will become a completely different person. Like, as I said before, the person I am today to what I was 6 years ago, the growth that I've, like, sometimes only recently have I seen it, because sometimes I'm like, I didn't even know I was capable of doing certain things. It's just amazing, and it's really exciting. And when you build a team and they also learn from you, and you start to sort of, you know, see that as well, and you actually start to, you know, look at yourself as like the Forbes 30 under 30 thing. I never thought I'd get that in a million years. But I must be influential in some aspect, which is so amazing, you know, because I never looked at myself as that. So for me, the most important thing is don't think that you can't, really, because you can.
I love it. I think you're so inspiring. I think you've got such a positive element to you, and something that, you know, people are going to really take away from. And I think that, you know, what you've done with the business and how you've grown it, and like I said, how you've just worked hard and not let anything stop you, is really inspirational. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I had such a good time talking to you, and I wish you all the best.
You too. Thank you very, very much.